Welcome to Future Pulse, a podcast series brought to you by IPI, your innovation partner for impact. Together, we will explore how ideas, creativity, and collaboration drive impactful innovation. Welcome to this episode of Future Pulse, where we'll be talking about the pivot point for enterprises. I'm Yvonne Chan, and I'm joined by Bill Padfield, Innovation Advisor at IPI, and advisor to NTT Venture Capital and Wavemaker Venture Capital, and Chok Yin Hung, the Innovation Advisor at IPI and board member at AEM Holdings. Welcome, gentlemen. At any point in time, businesses have faced some degree of challenge. It could be funding, innovation bottlenecks, or a lack of partnerships. So what is critical, though, is how they re-strategize and pivot to continue their journey of innovation and growth. So before we start our discussion, I would like both of you to briefly describe your current roles in the tech and innovation space, as well as your roles as an innovation advisor at IPI. Let's start with you first, Bill.
The innovation advisor role is really helping small to medium enterprises in Singapore to grow their business using different levels of innovation technology. Often these companies want to grow market share or move into new markets, or they may wish to move into new geographical parts of the world as well. So the other part of my role is advising startups in Singapore that are part of a community that's trying to raise funds. Whether it's startup seed money all the way through to Series C, D, and beyond. And I do that with two different venture capital funds who have different views in life, but it's all really to try and scale up businesses in this part of the world.
Thank you, Bill. Chok?
Maybe I just do a little bit of background myself before I talk about IPI.
Sure.
I've been in the electronics industry for probably more than 30 years. Last year, I just retired from my active role as a CEO of the AEM Holding. Since then, I stepped into the AEM board as a board member. Through my 30 years prior to AEM, I have actually started up two companies dealing with the semicon IC assembly and test services, and had successfully brought them to the IPO. Since I'm retired, I volunteered myself into IPI, the initiative as an advisor. Maybe as part of the giving back to the community, whereby I would help the SME or startup to see how to grow. They help them to grow and scale in this industry.
So I'm hearing a lot of scaling up, helping businesses grow and scale. But from your individual perspectives, what does a title like the pivot point encapsulate, Bill?
Gosh, pivot point can be moving into an adjacent new market. Could be a small move for the business that you've noticed an opportunity. It could be both offensive or defensive, or it could be a full-blown transformation of your business because of some new threat that's come in, some disruptors that entered the marketplace, or you just see a sizable opportunity that you want to pursue. So it can be small, it can be massive, but it's a point that you make decisions and decide to change where you commit people, resources, capital into a new opportunity.
So that pivot point, it can be small, like you said, it can be massive. It could be a full-blown transformation even. Thanks, Bill. Chok?
I think Bill put it very nicely. Maybe I just say one or two sentences around it. Actually, pivot points talks about transforming a company, through leveraging on its resources, and possibly even its IP, towards either for survival, like what Bill had said, or maybe for growth. So you actually see how to use the existing resources and IP.
Using existing resources and IP. I like that. Coming back to you, Bill, you've helped turn many failing businesses into profitable success stories. I want to ask, did you spot common pivot points in the businesses that you helped? I mean, do you have any examples to share with us today?
Yeah, common points are very good in hindsight. You can see it after the fact, but when you're in the middle of it all, or if it's being imposed on an organization, often it's very difficult to see. Companies will often maintain businesses that aren't contributing properly. They'll keep it because of tradition. They'll keep it because of the people. They'll keep it for a whole range of reasons. There is also businesses where they need to be looking to accrete gross margins in particular. Where can you see opportunities? And to me, this is one of the roles of a CEO, is to look at where can I enhance my gross margins every single day. And some of these opportunities may come. And in the past, I've seen businesses where they've been pivoting into services in the IT space, for example. They used to resell products or be product vendors, and they've realized that that shift has happened in the marketplace over the last 10 years or so, where you're getting margin accretion from services now rather than just selling products. So building out a service business, understanding how to move and pivot the business into a service-led business, particularly with annuity services such as X as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, whatever it may be, it becomes highly value accretive to the organization. So often that's been the case in helping companies pivot so far.
Thanks for those examples, Bill. How about Chuck? I want to ask you too, why do you think re-strategizing and pivoting has to be so difficult, that it comes with so many challenges? It is necessary, right? How do you spot the telltale signs?
This is probably a very long question. First of all, to re-strategize and also to pivot is about making a change. And as usual, making a change is always never easy. To get started, when to get started, as well as how do you make a change to bring the company to the desired outcome. And that is always not easy. But it is at a certain point in time, making these changes is probably very important. If you imagine every business, there's a runway. And if you're not careful and not making all these changes and transformations, your competitors may actually eat your lunch one of these days, and you actually end up with your runway being truncated and you have nowhere to go. Apart from that, the dynamic may change over time. There may be inflection point at certain point in time. And during this inflection point, it may be a case of opportunity, or maybe a case of making your business irrelevant. You need to be prepared for that. You need to transform and pivot and be prepared for this opportunity, or else you actually run to the end of your runway. So when do you need to pivot? Where the telltale sign? This is probably not easy. I believe Bill mentioned some of it. You probably will see your business, the revenue will have stagnated. And worst of all, you may see revenue actually going down. And you may even see that your profit has gone down. That's probably one of the telltale signs. The other telltale sign is really that you have a very lethargic organizations where you cannot retain talent, being one of it, or you cannot even attract talent into your company. But I prefer always not to deal with it when we reach the telltale sign. When you reach a telltale sign like this, you probably will be reacting and try to pivot, and that's very stressful. It's probably better the thing to do if you periodically, every few years, take a pause, look into where the company is, how healthy is your runway, and at that point, at a certain point in time, you need to decide. You probably need to pivot to keep yourself healthy.
So having a periodic review of the company's runway, right, and not wait till the signs are so obvious. By then, like you said, it's either it's too late or you're just picking up whatever reactive proposals or solutions are out there. Still sticking with you now, Chalk. AEM delivered some of its best results then, despite the challenges of the pandemic. I know you've just retired from your role as CEO there, but still a board member. Perhaps you could share with us how the focus on innovation transformed the company into a global leader in the semicon and electronic test solutions market.
AEM used to be just a equipment contract manufacturer. And we actually have a very good anchor customer. A few years ago, we took a pause, like what I just said earlier. We took a pause and actually make an assessment as to what we have, what we are capable to do, which are the space that we are playing in within this market. Then we actually take a look and assess where the market is heading. What are the mega trends, the pain point behind the mega trend and the market needs. From there, we attempt and make a few mapping as of what can we do to innovate, to provide solution or products to address this pain point market needs. And it is actually going through a few iterations of this. We identify a possible path where do we go? Where do we need to go? Moving from there, there are nothing that we need to address itself. There are obviously gaps with respect to our resources, with respect to our IP. And over here, we have to attract the right talent to backfill the gap. We also went out to acquire technology company as a way to bootstrap us up to the level that is needed. This has actually transformed AEM from being a equipment contract manufacturer to a product company. Has been actually quite interesting journey, and we are still pivoting. Today, we are probably at a market value of $1 billion, just slightly $1 billion. We used to be below $100 million market value. So pivoting is still ongoing, but it became a very exciting company today.
I like that point. I want to come back to that later. Your company now valued at over $1 billion. You are still pivoting. Your journey has not ended, right? So there's no finite point when it comes to transformation. Thanks, Jock. Come back to you on that point. I want to circle back to Bill and to have you expound a little bit more on some of your earlier sharing. What key factors then do you think enterprises need to consider when they're undergoing a transformation or major or minor changes of any sort?
I think it really comes into the three buckets of people, processes, and systems. And people being the hardest, I'll probably leave that to the last. So systems, do you have the right systems in-house to enable you to move into a new market? Are they agile enough? Are they flexible enough? Do you have that capability to pivot with the systems that you have? Who's going to assess that? Who's going to create that knowledge for you to decide? Processes, can they scale up? Can they change? Can they be modified? Who is going to be responsible for that transition? And then the last one, and the toughest one of all, is the people. And this is where I would go back to just a simple rule of thumb, which is 33% of your staff will normally get it and will embrace the change. 33% would probably get it with training and encouragement, and then 33% probably won't. So you need to be prepared to make changes with your people.
But it can be a pretty painful process too, can't it?
It can be very painful. It can be emotional, and the amount of hours that you go as a company can be incredible. So you need to make sure that you're not just generating heat, you're actually generating light, that you really are creating extra work for a purpose rather than just extra work for extra work's sake.
Generating light and not just generating heat. I like that one. Thanks, Bill. Chock, you want to weigh in on that? The people part, like you said, you guys had a shortage of the right talent. You had to go out there and look for them, right?
Yeah, the people is probably the toughest thing to address. It's never an exact science. There are two types of people that we're talking about here. There's actually the people that you have and people that you don't have. And the people that you have, how do you retain them? And like what Bill said, some you can retain and some you cannot retain. And then there are also the right people and the wrong people. So it's never exact art when it comes to people, but this is where a good leadership team will have to come in and make that assessment. And if they do it correctly, you have a good group of people working for you.
It's tough. I think finding talent, the right talent these days has got to be one of the toughest challenges. I want to ask you then, Chock, how does a company on the brink of pivoting also ensure that the cash cow part of the business is not marginalized during this transformation?
This is precisely what the Bill talks about, managing the people, and this is probably the hardest part. Like what I say, it's not exact science. And like what I say, the leadership team is probably the need to do this critical part. The first part of it is really, they need to be able to rally this team. This team actually, they support the cash cow business to believe in the journey that you're embarking on, buy into it, and then take it as actually a shared journey. Along the way, something along like this would probably have to be brought up, discussed openly, in a transparent manner with this team as of what is their role today and what is their role post the pivoting. If they see it nicely, then you have a chance. The second part of it is really like this. How do you actually ensure this current team actually feel they've been treated fairly and in a equitable manner? And that is not easy. You can actually address these two items, getting them believe in you and getting them feeling that they have been treated fairly and in an equitable manner. Then you have a chance. You have a chance of getting this team to be highly motivated to hold the fort within this cash cow business, and then looking forward to work with you, for you in this company post the transformation. But like what Bill has just said earlier on, not everybody will make it. You just have to try your best. Be transparent, be as genuine as you can, as in the leaders within the leadership team, and then know who are the critical few. It's probably important. There'll be probably some fallout along the way, and Bill has a right. Maybe equation 30-30-30. That's probably a very right equation.
Yeah, Bill, let's have you also weigh in a little bit more on this one, huh?
Yeah, it's going back through experience. I could even get quite cynical about it. You've got those that are supporters that are actually saboteurs. They will say that we're absolutely in line with this. We really want to work with it. And we'll help in every way we can, and then go away and do everything they can to stop it. You've got others that are really on board and really help, and those are your change agents, and those are the ones that you will identify pretty early in the process, and they can help you lead the change, because you can't do all this on your own. It's an absolute super challenge to do it as a company, never mind as an individual. So bringing those over is a process, and often you will use different change models to help you spread that word internally, so that people will realize that the future is in this new world that you're transitioning to, and no matter what they do, the old world is going to go. Otherwise, they will try to do everything they can to kill off this new initiative, to keep the old world and keep it in their comfort zone. It's human nature.
Yeah, it is.
You want me to add something else?
Sure.
Actually, in going through this process, the constant communications and open communication will probably make a lot of difference. And the two-way communications, it will allow you to actually identify who are the guy who will support it, who are the guy who probably are the guy who will be maybe cynical or sabotage this thing and things like that. So along the way, probably action had to be taken within the company.
See, that's a point that Chuck's just brought up there. That's absolutely correct. You can't over communicate in a change process. A lot of companies, going back again through experience, companies will under communicate, and the answer will be everybody knows the new strategy. And yet you bump into 5 people at random down the corridor. Not one of them understands what you're trying to do. So you've got to communicate once, twice, 3 times, over communicate, and then even walk the corridors, listening to people with their objections, listening to their misunderstandings, helping them correct, and making sure that they see you're completely accessible, that you're not just somebody there that's giving them all pain and problems. Share those challenges that you've got with them, and they'll happily open up and talk to you in most cases.
So over communicate, be accessible, be transparent.
Yeah. Make them feel they're in a safe environment.
Yeah. May I add one more point? Apart from over communicating something like this, you need to be very passionate when you communicate. It cannot be like reading from a script. This passion, people will feel it. So being passionate about what you intend to do is probably very important. People see it, people feel it.
So you have to be genuine and authentic then, as a change agent, and someone who's really, like you said, the evangelist for this pivoting, right, for it to happen, to take place. The people challenge aside, what are the other, besides the systems and processes too that Bill talked about, some common challenges that companies face now in order to transform? Is it too short timelines when they realize that they need to pivot when it's too late? Is it a lack of funds, a lack of partnerships? Is it mismatched resources, Bill?
Well, it's people, speed, and cost, and we've covered people a little bit, but speed and urgency. Why are we pivoting? If you can really focus on the why, why are we doing this? Why do we need to do this now in particular? And this can be based on an event, a compelling event. We need to change by this date. Because if you just say we need to change and, we'll chat about it again in 3 years' time, that's not going to get you anywhere. So one of the things that I've seen people do successfully is create artificial compelling events. It may not be what the old expression about a burning platform, but if you don't have one, create one so that it gets that sense of urgency running through the organization. And then people will focus on the why, and the why now gets answered, and they get that sense of urgency, and combine that with the comment that Chuck just made about passion, and all of a sudden great things start to happen.
Thanks, Bill. urgency, even create that platform for that that fire to start burning, right? Even if there isn't one. How refreshing. Chalk?
Actually, I like the way the Bill put it in terms of people, speed, and what's the last one? The cost. I think that one covers everything. Maybe instead of going to a macro level, I also go to a microscopic level and some of the items within these three segments. I think the one of the things that most people actually they would face is really getting the right talent, the externally to help them, the technology to help them. So you probably not easy to stumble onto them or to search these guys out. That's probably one of the hurdles you get through. The other thing that I a bit worried sometimes when you try to pivot and transform for the sake of changing it. You need to do a lot of validations. That's part of the process that actually Bill talked about. You need actually a lot of validation to ensure when you pivot to a place that actually have market value rather than if you pivot to a place that actually you end up have no value to anyone. So those are the small items within the three big bucket that Bill talked about, the people, the speed and cost. You need the right people. You need the process behind it. You need to actually validate it periodically so that you don't pivot and transform your company to something that have no value.
Yeah, don't pivot for the sake of pivoting, right? Do you see a lot of companies now, I mean, in your roles as advisors, having a bird's eye view of the industry, do you see many companies trying to pivot for the sake of pivoting? They have to be seen to be doing something?
I don't tend to see too many major pivots now because most of the companies I'm working with are startups. So they're, almost too young in their life cycle to really pivot. Otherwise, they know they're not going to survive anyway. But they will often be bringing innovative technology to their clients who are being forced to pivot, which has obviously been their business opportunity. But some of the larger groups that I've worked with in the past, pivoting is something that they will get a clear roadmap on, and they also spend time making sure they define what success looks like, so that we're not just pivoting for the sake of it. You can have a CEO that walks into a new business and says, right, we've got to change everything. Well, why? Because you're a new CEO, or because the market's changed, or what fundamentally? So it all goes back to locking down that why, locking down a roadmap, and understanding and defining what success looks like.
That's such a good point. Locking down the why. I want to just emphasize that again. Thanks, Bill. Chalk, you also wanted to say something.
Yeah, so there are companies who actually they try to change for the sake of change, and those are the ones that actually waste a lot of resources, money, and things like that. So I always like to use the McKenzie three horizons, in actually bucketing the different timeline for different things to do. What do I do in the first horizon? What do I do in the second horizon? And second horizon and third horizon is where I need to bring in resources and pivot to change based on the market, the evolving market or the mega trend coming in, and these are potentially the inflection point. So you always bucket yourself in the three horizon, and I think McKenzie have a very good system around it, helping you to map out these executions.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Chalk. Gentlemen, coming back to the point of what Chalk mentioned earlier, right? AEM Holdings, for instance, is still pivoting. So what do you have to say, Bill, when someone asks you, is this company's digital transformation complete? I mean, you've spent all these resources, so much time and talent, all this change. Are you done yet?
First reaction is I laugh, I'm afraid. Because these are journeys, these are not destinations. And if you realize the speed of innovation that's happening, there was one of the consulting groups recently was saying you're never going to see change at the slowest pace as it is today ever again. It's only ever going to get faster. So right now, if a company says that we've introduced a new MRP2 system, or we've introduced a new enterprise financial system, or we've introduced whatever it may be, and we're now digital, absolutely not. And there's always areas of the business that you can look at. Have you implemented robotic process automation? Are you really expanding on machine learning? Have you optimized your artificial intelligence capabilities? Are you using analytics? If so, how? Have you got predictive analytics, preemptive analytics? How? It just goes on and on and on as you refine your business more and more. But there's some very big steps companies can make up front that gets them onto this journey that has a significant impact on their income and their client experience, which is incredibly important. It can speed up their time to market. It can speed up their time to client acquisition. It can do so much, but that's not the end of it. There's always more to do on this journey.
Always more to do. I would like to invite Chok to share your thoughts on this question, please.
I probably have nothing much to add over here. I like what Bill say. It is always a journey, and you should look at it as it's a long journey. How to actually continuously create the runway again and again to be there. That's about it. It's never about end destination.
Would it be right to say it's about extending your runway, your company's runway, to make sure that you have legs to go on for as many years as possible?
Very much so. I would go so far as to say it's survival.
Yeah. Gentlemen, what do you think then, if you had to leave our listeners with, a key piece of advice, what 2 components do you think a company must have when trying to pivot? If I had to ask you to narrow it down to just 2.
It's definitely leadership. You must have actually a competent group of leader and leadership. And probably visionary. The second part is probably you must have enough funds to support you to do this transformation.
So enough funds and visionary.
I would only add one to that, if I may, which is the mandate. Get it done. Somebody needs to make sure, let's get this done with the support of the CEO and the board to really get that transition underway.
So it's visionary leadership, making sure you have enough funds and getting the right mandate out there. Whether you need to over communicate it, be extremely accessible and transparent about it, just making sure that all those that need to get on board are on board. Am I right, guys?
I would say so.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Bill and Chok, for your advice and sharing today. You've both provided some really stellar examples of how pivot points are part of a company's growth journey. It isn't a destination, like you said, and it's also really important as to why we need to identify the why before we pivot. And challenging as the process might be, it is still fundamental for the next step of a company's success. Thank you so much. My name is Yvonne Chan. Thank you once again for joining us. We will see you next time for another exciting and insightful episode.